December 14th, 1883. The stagecoach wheels cut through 6 inches of fresh Montana snow, and I knew before she even stepped down that somebody back east had sent me a Christmas present wrapped in cruelty. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. Well, the Hallowell family of Boston, Massachusetts served theirs at 20 degrees below zero. They took their unwanted daughter, the one they'd spent 29 years telling wasn't pretty enough, wasn't delicate enough, wasn't worth the air she breathed, and they shipped her west like damaged goods. Called it a joke. Thought they'd humiliate us both. What those fancy Boston folks didn't understand was this. Montana winters don't care about pretty. They care about who can survive, who can deliver a breech baby in a blizzard, who can stand up when the whole territory's watching and say, "I'm done running." By spring thaw, one family would be ruined, theirs or mine. And somewhere between the first snowfall and the last, I learned that ugly is just a word people use when they can't see what's actually standing right in front of them. This is that story. The morning the stagecoach brought her, I was standing on my porch checking my father's pocket watch for the 12th time that hour. 3:47, same as always. Damn thing stopped the day he died, 17 winters back, and no amount of winding ever got it ticking again. "Boss, you're gonna wear a hole in that watch case," Elwood called from the barn. "My foreman been with me since I was a 19-year-old fool trying to build a cattle empire from nothing but stubborn and debt." "Stage is late," I said. "Snow's deep between here and Copper Ridge. She'll come." She. Miss Seraphina Hallowell of Boston, Massachusetts. Delicate as porcelain according to her letters. Accomplished in piano, French, and needlework. The kind of refined Eastern lady who could bring civilization to 15,000 acres of Montana wilderness. I'd spent 2 months preparing new curtains from Denver, furniture that didn't look like it had been built by a man who'd rather punch cattle than sandwood, flowers in the parlor, already wilting in the cold, but I'd tried. The watch clicked shut in my palm. My father built this ranch from nothing, died trying to make it something worth passing down. I figured a proper wife would help me honor that legacy. Then I heard the wheels cutting through snow. Every hand on the ranch came running. 15 men, all curious as church ladies, all wanting to see the boss's fancy bride. The stagecoach pulled into the yard trailing steam and ice, the driver's beard frozen solid. "Drummond Ranch," he called, setting the brake. The door opened, and out stepped a woman who was everything I wasn't expecting. Tall, maybe 5'9" in her boots, sturdy, not delicate. Auburn hair coming loose from a practical bun, hands that looked like they knew work. A traveling dress the color of Montana dirt, nothing fancy about it. Behind me, Oswin, my youngest hand, blurted out what we were all thinking. "Boss, that ain't the lady in the photograph." The silence that followed could have frozen water. She stood there in the snow, 3 battered trunks at her feet, and looked me straight in the eye. No tears, no apologies, just waiting. "Mr. Drummond, I presume," she said, voice steady as January. "I'm Marjorie Hallowell. I believe you were expecting someone else." Not a question, a statement of fact. My father's watch slipped from my fingers. Elwood caught it before it hit the snow, raised one eyebrow at me like he was asking a question I couldn't answer. "Ma'am," I managed, my tongue thick as fence posts. "Welcome to Montana Territory." It was all I could think to say. She nodded once, sharp. "Thank you. I apologize for the confusion." That would be my half-sister, Seraphina. She found the prospect of life in Montana Territory unsuitable for her sensibilities. The way she said it, no sugar, no softness, just bitter truth laid out plain. "So they sent you instead?" Elwood asked, stepping forward when I couldn't find words. My stepmother thought Mr. Drummond would make do with the spare daughter. Her chin lifted. Consider it her idea of humor. Oswin shifted his weight, confused. "But boss, you sent for—" "I know what I sent for, boy." My voice came out harder than I meant. The temperature was dropping, wind cutting through the yard. She stood there in the cold, not moving, waiting for me to decide what to do with her. Behind those brown eyes, gold-flecked, I noticed, was something that looked like resignation, like she'd spent her whole life waiting to be rejected and had gotten used to the taste. Elwood cleared his throat. You gonna let the lady stand in the cold, or you gonna be a gentleman? Damn him for being right. Miss Hallowell, I said, it's freezing. Let's get you inside. We can discuss the situation once you're warm. She bent down, grabbed the handle of her largest trunk, didn't wait for help, just lifted it like she'd been hauling her own weight her whole life. Mr. Drummond, she said, meeting my eyes again, I'm not here to pretend this is anything but what it is. You've been made a fool of, and I've been used as the weapon. The question is, what are we going to do about it? Inside, the house felt wrong. I'd spent weeks making it perfect for a woman who wasn't coming. Lace curtains in the parlor, a delicate vanity table in the guest room, porcelain teacups that looked like they'd shatter if you breathed on them too hard. Midge, she'd asked me to call her Midge, stood in the doorway of that room, and something like sadness crossed her face. This was meant for someone else, she said quietly. I don't need finery, Mr. Drummond. Just a clean bed and honest conversation. Before I could answer, Beatrice Santos appeared with coffee, Elwood's wife, and the best thing that ever happened to my kitchen. She took one look at Midge and smiled, genuine, warm. Miss Hallowell, you must be exhausted. Let me bring you some supper. Please call me Midge, and I can help with supper. I'm not helpless. Beatrice's smile widened. Come on, then. 20 minutes later, I stood on the porch watching through the kitchen window as the two women worked side by side. Midge had her sleeves rolled up, hands moving quick and capable over vegetables, laughing at something Beatrice said, natural as breathing. Elwood joined me, tobacco smoke curling in the frozen air. So, he said, that's not what you ordered. That's an understatement. They sent you a woman who got on a train knowing exactly what waited for her. That takes guts, hermano. I pulled out my father's watch, still stopped, still frozen at the moment everything fell apart. I had plans, Elwood. A partner who could help me build something respectable. Someone who could make this place something more than dirt and cattle. He studied me. Maybe she can. You won't know till you ask what she can do instead of what she can't be. That night, I slept in the barn. Couldn't face going inside. Couldn't face the looks from my own men. In the morning, I found Midge in the kitchen before dawn, coffee already made, bread rising on the warming shelf. You're up early? I said. So are you. She poured me a cup without asking. Mr. Drummond, I think we should be honest with each other. Silas, if we're being honest, you can call me Silas. She nodded. Silas, then. I know what my stepmother intended. She wrote me explicit instructions. She pulled a letter from her pocket. Make no effort to please you. My presence is punishment enough. When you reject me, return immediately. The casual cruelty of it hit me like a fist. Your own mother wrote that? Stepmother. My real mother died when I was 8. Constance spent 21 years reminding me I'm the mistake that lived. She said it flat, like reciting facts. I don't expect anything from you, Silas, but I also won't be treated like I'm invisible anymore. The fire crackled between us. Outside, wolves howled closer than usual. 3 days passed. A telegram came from Boston. Constance checking if her joke had landed. I crumpled it without showing Midge, but she saw my face. She's gloating, Midge said. Wasn't a question. Reckon so. I'm sorry. For all of this. Wasn't your doing, but the town was talking. Oswin rode back from Copper Ridge with supplies and gossip thick as January mud. The boss's mail-order bride wasn't what was advertised. Poor Silas, probably trapped up there with God knows what. How would he show his face? That Saturday night, I sat in my office long after the lamps were out, trying to figure my next move. Midge had proven herself useful, reorganized my chaotic ledgers, mended every torn shirt on the ranch, even helped Beatrice with a difficult bread recipe. But useful wasn't what I'd wanted. I'd wanted respectable, pretty, someone to show off. The thought shamed me soon as I had it. A knock on the office door. Midge, wrapped in a shawl, holding a lamp. Can't sleep either? She asked. Too much thinking. I could leave, you know. When the road's clear, would make your life simpler. I looked at her standing there, practical, honest, Nothing like what I'd expected, but somehow exactly what I needed, if I was brave enough to see it. The blizzard's coming, I said. Big one, according to Elwood. We'll be snowed in for days. Let's use that time to figure out if we're both fools, or if maybe we're both exactly what we need. Outside, boots crunched in snow. Multiple sets, moving slow, deliberate. Then a knock, steady, patient. A voice I recognized, Randall Stokes, my neighboring rancher. Drummond, open up. We just want to talk. I opened the door to 6 men on my porch. Stokes in front, his foreman and 4 ranch hands behind him, torches throwing orange light across the snow. Evening, Silas, Stokes said, all false politeness. Heard your mail order arrangement hit a snag. What do you want, Randall? Just being neighborly, checking on your situation. His eyes slid past me, looking for Midge. Town's talking. Seems the lady you got ain't the lady you ordered. Behind me, I felt Midge move to the doorway. Didn't ask permission, didn't hide, just stood there, visible. Stokes tipped his hat with exaggerated courtesy. Ma'am, Randall Stokes. I own the spread west of here. Mr. Stokes. Her voice was ice. Shame about the confusion, Stokes continued, but I'm sure Drummond here is a reasonable man. You can't hold a man to a contract when he didn't get what was promised, right? Be like ordering a thoroughbred and getting a plow horse. Elwood appeared from the bunkhouse, rifle casual in his hands. Not pointed, just present. You boys should head home, he said quietly. Storm's coming. We'll leave when we're done talking. Stokes's smile didn't reach his eyes. See, Silas, some of us are concerned. You bring a woman out here under false pretenses, whole territory hears about it. Makes us all look like fools who can't even manage a simple bride arrangement. Nobody brought her under false pretenses, I said, keeping my voice level. Miss Hallowell came in good faith. Her family sent her instead of her sister. I accepted the situation. Accepted? Stokes laughed. Boy, you look like someone shot your dog. Don't pretend you're happy about this. Midge stepped forward then, beside me on the porch. Close enough our shoulders almost touched. Mr. Stokes, she said, voice carrying clear across the yard. I understand I'm not what Mr. Drummond expected. I'm not delicate, I'm not decorative, I'm also not deaf, and I'm not stupid. If you have business with Mr. Drummond, conduct it. If you came to gawk at the ugly bride, you can leave now. Silence dropped like snow. Stokes's face darkened. Ma'am, I didn't mean— Yes, you did. You meant every word. She didn't raise her voice, didn't back down. My stepmother sent me here as a joke. She thought humiliating both Mr. Drummond and myself would be entertaining. I'm sorry you're disappointed by the entertainment value. One of Stokes's men shifted uncomfortably. Another looked away. Now, Midge continued, if you're done insulting me on my own porch— It ain't your porch yet, Stokes said, and it might never be. Contract specified Serafina Hallowell. You ain't her. Makes the whole arrangement void, legally speaking. My blood went cold. Legal challenge. I hadn't thought of that. Judge Ward might have something to say about that, Elwood said. Might or might not. Stokes stepped back, satisfied he'd planted his seed. Just saying, Silas, you got options. No shame in sending her back. Get yourself a proper bride. They left, torches fading into darkness. But the damage was done. Sunday came cold and bright. Church was mandatory in Copper Ridge, not by law, but by social survival. Miss a Sunday, and the town decided you were either sick, sinful, or scared. We're going, I told Midge that morning. She looked up from her coffee, startled. To church? Together. Let them see you're a real person, not gossip. They'll stare, they'll judge. Let them. I surprised myself with how certain I sounded. I won't have you hiding like there's something wrong with you. The wagon ride took 40 minutes. Midge sat stiff beside me, hands folded in her lap. She'd worn her best dress, still plain brown, still practical. Nothing like what Serafina would have worn, I imagined. When we pulled up to the white clapboard church, every head turned. Whispers hissed like steam. I helped her down, deliberately taking her arm, proprietary. clear. The church doors opened, and I felt Midge hesitate. The pews stretched ahead of us like a gauntlet. Every face turned, every eye assessed. Beatrice and Elwood were already inside. They stood when they saw us, Beatrice waving us to sit behind them. A small act of solidarity that meant everything. Reverend Michaels, nervous but kind, welcomed us from the pulpit. Let us remember, brothers and sisters, that we are called to love our neighbor as ourselves, to judge not, lest we be judged. Subtle as a hammer, but I appreciated the effort. After service came the real trial, fellowship on the church steps. Women clustered, assessing, men with me, asking careful questions. That the bride, then? Jacob Morrison asked. Yes, Miss Marjorie Hallowell of Boston, my betrothed. Betrothed? He tasted the word. So you're going through with it? I keep my word, Jacob. Mrs. Patterson approached Midge with false sweetness, dripping like honey from a spoon. You're quite sturdy. I suppose that's practical for ranch life. Midge's smile was sharp as January wind. I find I'm suited to useful work, yes. And your family? They must be so— She searched for a word. Progressive to allow you to travel alone. My family was eager to be rid of me, Mrs. Patterson. Let's not pretend otherwise. The honesty shocked the woman silent. Then Clyde Henderson stepped forward. Older man, ran the boarding house, had kind eyes and steady hands. Miss Hallowell, he said formally, I run the boarding house in town. If you ever need anything at all, you let me know. Something intense in his words, almost protective. Midge looked puzzled, but grateful. Thank you, Mr. Henderson. Your mother would be proud of you. Midge froze. You knew my mother? I did. Fine woman. Saved my wife during the typhoid epidemic of '66. I owed her a debt. He nodded once. Consider it paid forward. Before Midge could respond, Stokes' voice cut across the churchyard, loud enough for everyone to hear. Drummond, heard you had some trouble with your mail order arrangements. The crowd quieted. Watching. Waiting. Careful, Stokes, I warned. Just making conversation. He smiled, playing to the audience. Woman's not what was advertised, is she? Man orders prime goods and gets seconds. He's got a right to send them back. No offense, miss, but you ain't Seraphina Hallowell. Laughter rippled through some of the men. Nervous, ugly laughter. Midge stepped forward before I could stop her. Stepped right up to Stokes, looked him in the eye. No, I'm not, she said, voice carrying clear. Seraphina is beautiful, accomplished, and utterly useless in any situation requiring actual fortitude. She faints at the sight of blood. She's never worked a day in her life. She couldn't birth a calf, set a bone, or balance a ledger if her life depended on it. The crowd was dead silent now. I am plain, Midge continued. I am practical, and I'm worth 10 of her in a crisis. Mr. Drummond can decide which he values, a pretty ornament or a real partner. My heart kicked against my ribs. This woman, this fierce, honest, extraordinary woman, was fighting for herself. For us. I stepped beside her, took her hand. Public declaration. I've made my decision, I said, looking at Stokes but speaking to everyone. Miss Hallowell stays. Stokes's smile went sharp. He'd been waiting for this. You all remember, he said to the crowd, not to me. This ain't the bride he contracted for. Well, that's fraud in the eyes of the law. Contract's not valid if the goods ain't what was specified. He turned to walk away, then paused. Just saying, might want to get Judge Ward's opinion on that, before you do something you can't undo. His eyes flicked between us. Wedding a woman under false pretenses? That's a legal tangle, Silas. Real legal. He left us standing there, Midge's hand trembling in mine, the whole town watching, and the seed of doubt planted deep. We rode home in silence. The Montana sky stretched overhead, blue and cold and indifferent. Halfway back, Midge spoke. He's right, you know. The contract specified Seraphina. I don't give a damn about the contract. The law might. Then the law's an ass. She almost smiled at that. Almost. Back at the ranch, I found Elwood in the barn checking on the pregnant mare. Town's divided, he said without preamble. Half think you're honorable for keeping your word. Half think you're a fool for accepting damaged goods. She's not damaged. I know that. You know that. Question is, does she? Through the barn door, I could see Midge in the kitchen window, Beatrice beside her, two women, heads together, making something out of nothing. Stokes is planning something, Elwood said. The legal challenge was just the opening move. What's he after? Your land, always has been. You got the best water rights in 3 counties. Elwood spit tobacco into the straw. And now you got a vulnerability he can exploit. My father's watch was heavy in my pocket, still stopped, still frozen. I'm not giving her up, Elwood. Didn't say you should, but you better be ready for a fight, because that's what's coming. That night, after supper, after the hands had gone to the bunkhouse and Beatrice had gone home, I found Midge sitting by the fire. She'd been crying, eyes red, but she wasn't crying now. I'm sorry, she said. I should never have come. Don't. This is my fault, my family's cruelty, falling on you. Midge. I sat across from her. Listen to me. Your family sent you here as a weapon, but you're not a weapon. You're a woman who got on a train knowing she'd probably be rejected, and you did it anyway. That's not weakness. That's courage. Courage doesn't pay debts. It doesn't make contracts legal. No, but it's worth more than any contract. She looked at me then, really looked, and I saw something shift in her eyes. Like maybe, for the first time, she believed she might be worth fighting for. Outside, the wind picked up. The blizzard Elwood had predicted was finally coming. We'd be snowed in for days, forced together, forced to decide what we were to each other. The first snowflakes hit the window like thrown salt. Storm's here, Midge said softly. Reckon it is. We sat there as the wind howled and the temperature dropped and the world outside turned white and wild. Inside, the fire crackled. 2 people, waiting to see if they were shelter for each other or just 2 strangers trapped in the same storm. But one thing was certain. By the time the snow cleared, everything would be different, one way or another. 3 days snowed in. The blizzard hit that first night like God's own fist, burying the ranch under 4 feet of white. For 72 hours, we were cut off from everything. Town, neighbors, the rest of the world. Should have been miserable. Instead, it was the most honest 3 days of my life. Midge proved herself in 100 small ways, reorganized my disaster of a bookkeeping system, taught Beatrice a poultice recipe she'd learned at Boston General Hospital, fixed the stove damper I'd been meaning to get to for 6 months, and every evening we sat by the fire and talked, really talked, about things that mattered. I always wanted to be a doctor, she said one night, but women can't. So I volunteered where I could. Out here, we don't care about credentials, I told her. We care about who can do the job. Her eyes got bright with something that might have been tears, but she blinked them away. On the 3rd day, the roads barely cleared, a stranger rode into the yard. He was maybe 45, wearing a long coat and carrying a leather case. Professional. Official. The kind of man who carried authority in his bones. Mr. Drummond, I'm Samuel Davies, Pinkerton detective. He showed a badge. I need to speak with you about your mail-order bride arrangement. My stomach dropped. Elwood's hand moved toward his rifle. What business is it of yours? I asked. I'm investigating certain irregularities. May I come inside? Midge appeared in the doorway, saw the badge, and went pale. It's happening, she whispered. She sent him. Davies heard her. Ma'am, I assure you, you're working for Constance Hallowell. Midge's voice shook. She hired you to take me back. I'd like to ask you both some questions, inside, if you don't mind. We didn't have a choice. Not really. In the parlor, Davies pulled out papers, official-looking documents that made my chest tight. Mr. Drummond, you contracted with a Miss Seraphina Hallowell for marriage. Is that correct? That's correct. But the woman who arrived was not Miss Seraphina. It was her half-sister, Miss Marjorie. He looked at Midge. Is that also correct? Yes, I said carefully. And Miss Hallowell, Marjorie, are you here against your will? No, Midge said firmly. Did Mr. Drummond threaten or coerce you to stay? Absolutely not. Then why did your family send you instead of your sister? Midge's jaw set. As a joke, they thought humiliating both of us would be entertaining. Davies wrote this down, his face unreadable. I'll need to verify these claims with Boston. You are working for her, I said, standing. For Constance. I work for whoever pays me, Mr. Drummond. And truth, he paused, has a way of surfacing. He left without clarifying, and I wanted to put my fist through a wall. I should leave, Midge said, before this gets worse. The hell you will. Silas, she'll destroy you. She'll— A horse thundered into the yard. Elwood burst through the door without knocking, his face white as the snow. Boss, he gasped. Sarah Henderson's in labor. Baby's breech. She's bleeding bad. Doc's snowed in at Copper Creek. 20 miles might as well be China. Silence dropped like an axe. Jesus, I breathed. We'll have to— Midge was already moving. Get me there, she said, grabbing her medical bag from the shelf. Now. It's 20 below, I said. The wind'll cut you to ribbons. Sarah Henderson will die if someone doesn't help her. Midge was wrapping herself in every piece of wool we had. I've delivered breech babies. I can do this. Midge, are you going to drive the sled or am I going alone? Elwood was already hitching the horses. The ride was hell, pure hell. Wind screaming like wounded animals. Snow so thick I could barely see the horses' heads. Temperature dropping so fast the reins froze in my hands. Midge sat beside me, holding her medical bag, her face set like stone. Not afraid. Determined. Halfway there, I had to stop. Her hands were going numb. I pulled her against my chest, warming her fingers inside my coat. You don't have to do this, I said. Yes, I do. Because if I don't, who will? She looked up at me. And what kind of person turns away from someone dying? We made it to the Henderson place in an hour. Should have been 20 minutes. Inside was chaos. Sarah screaming. Blood. Her young husband Thomas, holding her hand, helpless. Clyde Henderson, her father-in-law, looking terrified. Two small children crying in the corner. Midge transformed. All fear gone. Pure competence. She commanded that room like a general. Boil water, clean sheets, whiskey, move. I'd never seen anything like it, her hands steady despite exhaustion. Talking Sarah through contractions, turning the baby by touch alone. 2 hours of hell and blood and screaming. Then, a baby's cry. Boy, Midge said, exhausted, covered in blood, triumphant. Healthy. Sarah's going to make it. Everyone stared at her like she'd performed a miracle. Maybe she had. Thomas Henderson was crying. You saved them. You saved my wife and son. Outside, the storm was breaking. Morning light crept through the windows. That's when Davies rode up. Every muscle in my body tensed. If he tried to take her now, after what she'd just done. But Davies dismounted slow, hands visible, came to the door, saw Midge covered in blood, saw the baby, saw the grateful family. Mr. Drummond, he said quietly, I need you to understand something. I'm not investigating you for Constance Hallowell. What? I'm investigating her and Sterling Blackwood, the man who holds your mortgage. He pulled out more papers. Fraud. Racketeering. Manipulation of contracts across 3 territories. Your case is one of many. Miss Hallowell's testimony could help me build a case against them, but I needed to know she was here willingly first. The world tilted. You're helping us? Let's say I'm helping justice. He looked at Midge with something like respect. Ma'am, what you just did, that took extraordinary skill and courage. Thank you, Midge said quietly. But you should know. Davies's face went grim. Constance Hallowell made her next move 3 days ago. She bought your mortgage from the bank, Mr. Drummond. Bought it outright. and she's calling it due in 30 days unless Miss Hallowell returns to Boston immediately. The words hit like bullets. She owns my debt? Every cent. $5,000 due January 15th, and from what I can see in your books, you can't pay it. Midge's face crumpled. She's going to take everything, because of me. Let her try, I said, but the words sounded hollow even to me, because we both knew the truth. Constance Hallowell had just put a noose around my neck, and she was holding the rope. Word spread fast about what Midge had done. By the time we made it back to the ranch, the story had grown wings. The ugly bride who saved Sarah Henderson and her baby. The Eastern lady who rode through a blizzard at 20 below and delivered a breech birth like she'd been born to it. At the general store 3 days later, the town's tune had changed. "Miss Hallowell," Mrs. Patterson said, actually looking ashamed, "I owe you an apology. What you did for Sarah was what anyone with skill would do," Midge said quietly. "No, ma'am. That took guts. Real guts." Thomas Henderson showed up at the ranch that afternoon with half a butchered hog. "For you and Miss Midge, anything you ever need, ever, you call on me." But the best moment came from Clyde. He pulled Midge aside after church that Sunday. I watched from across the yard as he spoke to her, watched her face transform. Shock, then understanding, then something like pride. When she came back to me, her eyes were wet. "Clyde knew my mother," she said. "She saved his wife during the typhoid epidemic of '66. He's been carrying that debt for 17 years. That's why he's been protective. He said," her voice broke, "he said I'm her daughter through and through, that she'd be proud." First time I'd seen her connect to her past with anything but pain. Micro cliffhanger number 1. 150 words. That night, we sat by the fire, just the two of us. The blizzard had forced intimacy, but this was different. This was choice. "Tell me about her," I said. "Your mother. She was a healer, not trained, just gifted. People came to her." Midge stared into the flames. "When she died, it felt like all the warmth left the world. Then Constance came, and I learned what cold really meant. You're like her. The healing. I wanted to be a doctor so badly, but women can't, so I volunteered where I could. Boston General let me help with births, minor surgeries. Constance called it unseemly. Out here, we call it essential." She looked at me then, really looked, and something passed between us. Understanding. Recognition. I reached for her hand. Work-roughened palm against my calloused one. Perfect fit. "These are healer's hands," I said. "Strong hands. Good hands." A tear slipped down her cheek. Just one. Then she was crying, really crying, for the first time since she'd arrived. All those years of being told she wasn't enough, finally cracking open. I pulled her against my chest and let her cry. Didn't try to fix it. Just held her. When she finally pulled back, she was smiling through tears. "Nobody's ever valued what I can do before. Then they're fools. Every last one." The next morning, Davies came back with a gray-haired man in a judge's coat. "Mr. Drummond, Miss Hallowell," Davies said, "this is Territorial Judge Marcus Ward. He's reviewed your situation." My stomach clenched. Legal trouble. Had to be. But Ward smiled. Actually smiled. "I wanted to inform you of territorial precedent," he said, pulling out law books. "Montana Territory recognizes good faith contracts. Your correspondence specified a bride of good character and moral standing. The Hallowell family fulfilled that contract regardless of which sister they sent." "So the contract's valid?" I asked. "More than that. If you marry Miss Marjorie, the contract is fulfilled in spirit and letter. Constance Hallowell has no legal standing to interfere with your marriage." Hope bloomed in my chest like spring flowers. "What about the mortgage?" Midge asked. Ward's face sobered. "That's separate. She can still call the debt, but she can't force you back to Boston, Miss Hallowell." "And if we prove Sterling Blackwood got that mortgage through fraud," Davies added, "it could be nullified entirely. I'm working on that." After they left, I turned to Midge. The words came easier than I expected. "Will you marry me?" She blinked. What? Not because of the contract. Not to spite your stepmother. But because you're everything I never knew I needed. Will you marry me, Midge? Yes. Simple. Clear. Honest. I kissed her then. First time. Gentle. Honest. Earned. We were still standing there, foreheads together, when Elwood came running. Boss! The North Pasture Barn! I turned, looked toward the horizon. Orange glow against the night sky. Fire. We ran. All of us. But by the time we got there, it was too late. The barn was an inferno. All our winter hay, $8,000 worth, going up in smoke. The cattle's food supply. Our survival margin. Insurance won't cover arson, Elwood said, kicking at boot prints in the snow, leading away from the barn. Deliberate. Planned. Midge stood beside me, watching everything burn. She did this, she whispered. Constance. She's not even waiting for the mortgage deadline. She's destroying you now. I pulled out my father's watch, still stopped at 3:47, still frozen. We'll find a way, I said. But the numbers didn't lie. Mortgage payment due in 23 days, $5,000. Hay loss, $8,000. Winter feed to buy or the cattle would starve, another $4,000. Cash on hand, $2,300. The math was impossible. I should leave, Midge said. Write to Constance, tell her I'm coming home. Maybe she'll forgive the debt. No. Silas. I said no. I turned to face her. We don't surrender to evil, Midge. Not ever. But even as I said it, I didn't know how we'd win. The fire burned through the night. By morning, there was nothing left but ash and ruin, and a telegram waiting at the ranch house. From Constance Hallowell. The telegram sat on my kitchen table like a coiled snake. Midge read it aloud, her voice hollow. Dear Marjorie, by now you understand consequences of stubbornness. Mr. Drummond's barn fire tragic, his financial difficulties unfortunate. All resolved if you return home as instructed. I hold his mortgage. Payment due, January 15th. Prepared to forgive debt entirely, if you return immediately and relinquish all claim to Drummond name. Alternatively, he can pay in full. Though recent losses make that challenging. Choice is yours. Come home or watch him lose everything. Your stepmother, Constance Hallowell. Christmas was 3 days away. Should have been joy. Instead, it was a noose tightening. She's not bluffing, I said, staring at the ledgers. Even if I sell half the herd, I'm $800 short, and without feed, the rest will starve by March. Elwood stood in the doorway. Stokes offered to buy your cattle. Low price. He knows you're desperate. He's circling like a vulture. Been circling for years, hermano. Now he's got Constance's help. The pieces fell together. Stokes wanted my land. Best water rights in 3 counties. Constance wanted Midge punished. They'd found each other somehow, made a deal before Midge even arrived. This wasn't just cruelty, it was conspiracy. I spent Christmas Eve in the barn, trying to calculate impossible solutions, heard footsteps behind me. Midge, wrapped in a shawl, holding a lamp. You can't fix this alone, she said. I can't fix it at all. Then maybe, she took a breath, maybe I should do what she wants. No. Silas, she'll take everything. The ranch, your legacy, everything your father built. You think I care about land more than... I stopped myself. Then what? Her eyes searched mine. Be honest. You thought you were getting a beautiful wife. Instead, you got me and nothing but trouble. The accusation hit like a fist because part of it was true. I had wanted something else, someone else, but that was before I knew her. You're right, I said slowly. I wanted an ornament, a decoration to make me look respectable. I was a fool. She nodded, vindicated in her worst fear. But I was a fool because I didn't know what I actually needed. I needed someone who could stand beside me in a blizzard, who could save lives while I was worrying about pretty curtains, who could look at $8,000 going up in smoke and not run, but stand and fight. Fighting doesn't pay mortgages. Maybe not, but honor does. And I won't let cruel people win by making you believe you're not worth fighting for. She started to cry then, real tears, not the controlled ones she allowed herself. I pulled her close and we stood there in the barn, surrounded by the smell of hay and horses and ruin. New Year's came. Beatrice tried to organize a community celebration, but the mood was funeral. Everyone knew Drummond Ranch was going under. Question was when, not if. At church that Sunday, the whispers followed us like ghosts. Shame about Silas. That bride brought him nothing but trouble. Fire started right after she arrived. Suspicious, if you ask me. Should have sent her back when he had the chance. Midge heard it all. Kept her chin up, but I saw her dying inside. After service, Mrs. Patterson approached with false kindness. Miss Hallowell, perhaps you should return to your family until Mr. Drummond's situation stabilizes? Translation clear. Leave before you drag him down further. Perhaps you're right, Midge said quietly. Midge, I warned, but she wouldn't look at me. January 10th. 5 days before the mortgage came due. I'd sold every head of cattle I could spare, borrowed from every friend who'd lend, came up $4,200, 800 short, might as well have been 8,000. That afternoon, Sheriff Boone rode up with papers. Good man, uncomfortable with his duty. Silas, I'm sorry. Constance Hallowell petitioned for immediate possession. Judge signed an emergency order. Claims risk of asset concealment. He nailed official seals to my door. Red wax. Legal. Final. The ranch hands gathered, silent, watching their boss get publicly humiliated. You got till the 15th to pay in full, Sheriff Boone said quietly. After that, property transfers to Mrs. Hallowell's ownership. Midge stood on the porch, face blank. I knew that look now. It was the look of someone who'd spent 29 years being told they destroyed everything they touched, and now she believed it. That night, I found her packing. What are you doing? What I should have done weeks ago. Her hands shook as she folded clothes. I'm leaving. I'll write to Constance. Tell her I'm coming back. Midge, no. She spun on me, tears streaming. I won't watch you lose everything. Your father built this place from nothing. He died for it. And I'm the ugly joke that's destroying it all. Stop. It's true. Stokes was right. The town was right. I'm bad luck. I crossed the room in 3 strides and took her by the shoulders. You listen to me. You are not bad luck. You are not a joke. You are the bravest, strongest, most extraordinary person I've ever met. Brave people don't run. Smart people know when a fight's lost. This fight's not lost. I didn't believe it, but I said it anyway. We have 5 days. Davies is still investigating Sterling. Judge Ward believes in us, and I stopped. Couldn't say it, not yet. You what? She whispered. I love you. That's why you have to stay. Because losing you would hurt worse than losing the ranch ever could. She stared at me, shook her head. Love doesn't beat legal contracts, Silas. Love doesn't pay mortgages. She pulled away. I'm leaving at first light. Outside, wind howled. Inside, the fire was dying. My father's watch sat heavy in my pocket. Still stopped. Still frozen at the moment everything fell apart. And I didn't know how to make it start again. The foreclosure hearing was set for January 10th, the coldest day of the winter. They held it in the courthouse because nowhere else could fit the crowd. Seemed like the whole territory showed up. Some to support, most to watch a man fall. The stove struggled against the cold. You could see your breath inside. I sat at the defendant's table in my only suit, Midge beside me in her brown dress, Elwood and Beatrice behind us. Across the aisle, Constance's Boston lawyer, Cornelius Finch, slick as creek ice, shuffled papers with gloved hands. Judge Ward entered. Same man who'd ruled our marriage contract valid 2 weeks ago. I hoped that meant something. This court will come to order. Ward's breath made clouds. We're here regarding the matter of Hallowell versus Drummond. Foreclosure petition on property located at— Your Honor, Finch interrupted, standing with the confidence of a man who'd never lost. My client, Mrs. Constance Hallowell of Boston, Massachusetts, holds a legitimate mortgage note on the Drummond property, face value $5,000. Due date, January 15th. Given recent property destruction and the debtor's deteriorating financial condition, we seek immediate possession to preserve asset value. Ward looked at me. Mr. Drummond, do you dispute the debt? No, Your Honor. The debt is real. The words tasted like ash. But I have until January 15th to pay. Yet the debtor has no means to pay, Finch said smoothly. The barn fire destroyed his winter hay supply. He cannot both feed his remaining cattle and satisfy the note. This constitutes effective default. Mr. Drummond, what's your financial position? I stood, had to force the words out. Your Honor, with the cattle sale, I can raise approximately $4,200. I'm $800 short. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. The gap might as well have been 8,000. Midge stood suddenly. Your Honor, I request permission to speak. Miss Hallowell, you're not party to this action. But I'm the reason for it. Her voice carried clear. Mrs. Constance Hallowell is my stepmother. This entire situation is her revenge for my refusal to return to Boston as commanded. She's weaponizing the law to— Your Honor, Finch interrupted, the young lady's family troubles are irrelevant to a simple debt matter. Emotions don't erase legal obligations. He's right, Miss Hallowell, Ward said gently. Without evidence of explicit blackmail or coercion, personal animosity doesn't invalidate a lawful debt. I'm sorry. Midge sat down hard, silenced. Again, I reached for her hand under the table. She was shaking. Your Honor, Finch continued, I'd like to call a character witness, someone who can speak to the debtor's judgment and decision-making. Ward nodded. Proceed. I call Mr. Randall Stokes. The courtroom went still. I felt my stomach drop. Stokes stood from the back row, walked to the witness stand like he owned the place, took his oath, settled in with a smile that made my blood run cold. Mr. Stokes, Finch began, how long have you known Mr. Drummond? Going on 12 years now, neighboring ranchers. And would you characterize his recent decisions as sound? Stokes made a show of reluctance. Well, I hate to say it, but Silas has been distracted lately. This mail-order bride situation, marrying a woman who's not what was advertised, makes a man wonder about his judgment. That's a damn lie. I started to stand. Mr. Drummond! Ward's gavel cracked. Sit down or I'll have you removed. Stokes continued, playing to the crowd now. There's even talk his barn fire wasn't an accident. That maybe someone connected to his situation had motive. Financial troubles can make people desperate. The implication hung like smoke, Midge or her family responsible. The room erupted in whispers. Order, Ward demanded. Mr. Stokes, do you have evidence of arson or merely speculation? Speculation, Your Honor. But concerning speculation. Finch produced a document with a flourish. Your Honor, I have something more substantial than speculation. A contract dated July 15th of last year, 6 months before Miss Hallowell's arrival. He handed it to Ward. My heart stopped. This is an option agreement between Mrs. Constance Hallowell and Mr. Randall Stokes. Mr. Stokes has contractually agreed to purchase the Drummond property immediately upon foreclosure. Purchase price, $3,000. The courtroom exploded. $3,000. Half what it was worth. A steal. And dated 6 months ago. Before Midge even left Boston. I turned to stare at Stokes. He wouldn't meet my eyes. You've been working with her? My voice was barely a whisper. Before Midge even arrived. This was planned from the beginning? Stokes shrugged. Business is business, Drummond. Nothing personal. Nothing personal? I was on my feet now. Ward's gavel be damned. You've been my neighbor for 12 years. We've helped each other through droughts and hard winters. And you conspired with a woman you'd never met to destroy me? I conspired to acquire valuable land at a reasonable price, Stokes said. Your romantic troubles were just convenient timing. You son of a— Mr. Drummond. Ward's voice cracked like a whip. One more outburst and you'll spend tonight in jail. Sit down. I sat, but fury burned in my chest like the barn fire. Midge gripped my hand so tight her nails drew blood. He set this up, she whispered. All of it. The legal challenge at church, the gossip, maybe even the fire. Can't prove the fire, Elwood muttered behind us. But the rest? That's conspiracy clear as day. Ward studied the contract, his face troubled. Mr. Finch, this casts your client's motives in a rather unflattering light. Motive is irrelevant, Your Honor. The debt is legitimate. The deadline is clear. Whether Mrs. Hallowell chooses to sell the property after foreclosure is her legal right. It's collusion, I said. They're working together to steal my land. Prove it, Finch said calmly. Prove that Mrs. Hallowell and Mr. Stokes communicated before the mortgage purchase. Prove coordination. Otherwise, it's simply two independent business transactions that happen to benefit each other. And that was the trap. Clean. Legal. Impossible to escape. Ward was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was heavy. This court finds that while the debt is not yet technically due, the debtor's inability to pay is clear and documented. He paused. However, given the unusual circumstances and questions about the mortgage acquisition, I'm inclined to allow Mr. Drummond until the original due date to satisfy the debt. Brief flicker of hope. But make no mistake, if payment is not received in full by midnight January 15th, the property will immediately transfer to Mrs. Hallowell's possession. Sheriff Boone will enforce. No extensions will be granted. No appeals will be heard. The gavel fell. 5 days. $800. Impossible. All rise. The courtroom emptied slowly. People avoiding my eyes. Some sympathetic. Most relieved. It wasn't them. Stokes walked past, didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. Nothing personal, Silas. Like I said. It's personal now, I said quietly. Outside, the cold bit through my coat. Midge stood beside me, staring at nothing. He's been planning this since July, she said. Before I even knew I was coming here. Constance contacted him, made a deal, probably offered him the land cheap if he helped destroy you. The fire, Elwood said. Boot prints leading away. Stokes's men. Can't prove it. Don't need to prove it. We know. But knowing didn't change the math. 5 days. $800. And a conspiracy so tight we couldn't break it. Back at the ranch, Midge went to her room without a word. I heard her crying through the door, but she'd locked it, wouldn't let me in. Beatrice tried. Came back shaking her head. She thinks this is all her fault, that she brought this curse on you. It's not her fault. Tell her that. But when I knocked, she didn't answer. A night fell. I sat in my office staring at ledgers that wouldn't balance no matter how many times I recalculated. My father's watch sat on the desk, still stopped at 3:47. Pa, I said to the empty room, I don't know what to do. I kept my word, protected her, did the right thing, and I'm losing everything you built anyway. No answer, just wind rattling the windows. A sound from the hallway. I looked up to see Midge standing there, eyes red, face pale. I'm going to write to Constance, she said. Tell her I'll come back if she forgives the debt. No. Silas, I said no. We don't surrender to evil. Not ever. Then we lose everything. Maybe. I stood, walked to her. But we lose it with our dignity intact. Together. She started to cry again. I love you. That's why I can't let this happen. I love you. That's why it has to. We stood there in the dark hallway, holding each other while the clock ticked toward midnight, toward January 15th. And toward the end of everything. Through the window I could see the North Star, steady and cold. 5 days left, and I still didn't have an answer. But somewhere in Denver, Samuel Davies was digging through Sterling Blackwood's ledgers. Somewhere in Boston, the truth was waiting to surface. We just had to survive long enough to find it. Outside, a wolf howled. Lonely, desperate. Inside, we held each other tighter. One more night. That's all we had left. One more night. January 11th. 4 days left. I spent the night in the barn talking to ghosts. My father's pocket watch in my hand, turning it over and over. still stopped at 3:47. I don't know what to do, Pa, I said to the darkness. I kept my word, protected her, did everything right, but I'm still losing. The watch sat heavy and dead in my palm. Then, one tick. Just one. Then silence again. I stared at it. Had I imagined that? Footsteps in the doorway. Midge, wrapped in a shawl, carrying a lamp. Couldn't sleep either? She asked. Too much thinking. She sat beside me in the straw. We'd barely spoken since the trial. Too much pain between us. Too much guilt and blame neither of us deserved, but carried anyway. I wrote the letter, she said quietly, to Constance, telling her I'm coming home. Something in my chest cracked. Midge. But I didn't send it. She looked at me, eyes red from crying. Because you were right. Surrendering to evil isn't the same as losing to it, and I'm done letting her win by making me believe I'm not worth fighting for. I pulled her close. I love you. I love you too, even if we lose everything. Especially if we lose everything. We sat there as the night grew colder, holding each other, waiting for dawn. Then, hoofbeats, fast and urgent, Davies burst into the yard like the devil was chasing him. His horse was lathered, steaming in the cold. He'd been riding hard. Drummond. Miss Hallowell. He dismounted before his horse fully stopped. I need to talk to you. Now. We met him in the kitchen. Beatrice appeared from somewhere, started coffee. Elwood came from the bunkhouse, rifle ready just in case. Davies spread papers across the table with shaking hands. Not from cold, from excitement. I've been in Denver for 3 days, he said, going through Sterling Blackwood's financial records. And I found it. The proof. Proof of what? I asked. Everything. Davies pulled out a ledger. Sterling Blackwood has been running a mortgage fraud scheme across 3 territories. He buys distressed properties through shell companies, then manufactures defaults to seize them below value. He flipped pages, showing entries, property after property, names I didn't recognize, but patterns I understood. Your barn fire? Davies looked at me. He's done the exact same thing to 17 other ranchers in Montana alone. Always the same pattern. Buy the mortgage, create a crisis, force foreclosure, resell at profit. My blood went cold. He set the fire? Can't prove he lit the match, but the timing, the boot prints, I'd bet my badge his men did it. Federal marshals arrested him in Boston 4 days ago, Davies continued. Fraud, racketeering, conspiracy. He's looking at 20 years in prison. What about my mortgage? I asked, afraid to hope. That's the beautiful part. Davies smiled, first time I'd seen him smile. Your mortgage was acquired through fraudulent means. Sterling used a shell company to buy it from the bank, then transferred it to Constance as part of their scheme. The transaction is void, legally nullified. The room spun. Void? Midge whispered. You mean, you don't owe Constance Hallowell a single cent. Davies looked at both of us. The original bank holds your mortgage, and they're willing to work out a payment plan. Normal terms. No emergency foreclosure. I sat down hard. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. We're free? I managed. Free and clear. Judge Ward will make it official at 9 this morning. Elwood let out a whoop. Beatrice started crying. Midge just stared at Davies like he'd spoken a foreign language. What about Constance? She asked quietly. She'll just try something else. Davies's smile went sharp. That's the other beautiful part. He pulled out newspapers. Boston papers. Headlines screamed, Hallowell family cruelty exposed. Boston matron's heartless scheme. Society shuns Hallowell name. When word got out about how she treated you, Midge, shipping you west as a joke, conspiring to destroy an innocent man, Boston society turned on her, viciously. Davies spread the papers out, article after article, editorials, society columns, all condemning Constance Hallowell's cruelty. Your sister Seraphina's engagement to Theodore Worthington, Davies said, broken. The Worthington family wants nothing to do with the Hallowells. 3 other prominent families have cut social ties. Your father's been forced to sell the Boston house to cover debts. Father's selling the house? Midge's voice was barely a whisper. Constance's schemes were keeping the family afloat. Now that Sterling's arrested and the fraud's exposed, everything's collapsing. She's ruined, financially, socially, completely. Midge started laughing. Not happy laughter, something wilder. Relief mixed with disbelief, mixed with years of pain finally validated. She destroyed herself, Midge said. The joke she tried to play backfired. Cosmic justice, Beatrice murmured. There's more, Davies said. If you want to pursue it, you have grounds for a lawsuit. Conspiracy, fraud, attempted extortion could win substantial damages. No, Midge said immediately. I don't want her money. I don't want anything from her. I just want her out of my life. Fair enough. Davies gathered his papers. Judge Ward's calling an emergency session at 9 to void the mortgage and rule on Stokes's involvement. Whole town's invited. You should be there. After he left, we sat in stunned silence. It's over, Midge finally said. It's really over. I pulled out my father's watch, looked at it, and as I watched, it ticked. Not once. Continuously. Steady as a heartbeat. 3:47 became 3:48. Time started moving again. At 9 that morning, the courthouse was packed. Every citizen of Copper Ridge and half the county besides. Word had spread faster than wildfire. Judge Ward entered, and this time, he was smiling. This court is convened to address new evidence in the matter of Hallowell versus Drummond. He held up Davies' documents. Evidence of systematic fraud perpetrated by Sterling Blackwood of Boston, Massachusetts, in conspiracy with others. He read the findings. Every detail, the shell companies, the manufactured defaults, the 17 other victims across Montana territory. The mortgage on the Drummond property was acquired through fraudulent means and is hereby declared null and void. Mr. Drummond, you are released from all obligations to Mrs. Constance Hallowell. The gavel fell. The courtroom erupted in cheers. People I barely knew were clapping. Thomas Henderson, whose wife and son Midge saved, stood and applauded. Clyde Henderson was crying openly. Even Mrs. Patterson looked relieved. Only Stokes sat silent, face pale as January snow. Furthermore, Ward continued, regarding Mr. Randall Stokes's involvement, while we cannot prove criminal conspiracy, his option agreement with Mrs. Hallowell shows clear intent to profit from Mr. Drummond's misfortune. Mr. Stokes, you are ordered to pay court costs and your option agreement is voided. Stokes stood, furious. This is justice, Ward said simply. Be grateful I'm not charging you as an accessory. Stokes stormed out, probably heading back to his ranch to lick his wounds. But I didn't care about him anymore. I turned to Midge. She was crying. Real tears, clean tears, tears of relief. We won, she whispered. No, I said, taking her hand. We survived, together. Outside, people lined up to congratulate us, to apologize for doubting, to celebrate justice. Reverend Michaels gripped my shoulder. Sometimes the Lord works in mysterious ways, Silas, but he works. That night, back at the ranch, I sat on the porch with Midge. Stars wheeling overhead, my father's watch ticking steady in my pocket. Tomorrow, I said, we get married, if you'll still have me. Try and stop me, she said. And for the first time since that stagecoach arrived in December, I believed everything might actually be all right. January 14th. The day before the mortgage would have been due, instead of losing everything, I was getting married. The church was decorated despite the cold. Beatrice had organized the whole thing. Wildflowers somehow kept alive indoors, candles on every surface, the pews packed with every soul from 3 counties. Midge wore a simple white dress, nothing fancy, nothing like what Serafina would have worn. But when I saw her walking down the aisle, Clyde Henderson proudly offering his arm, my breath caught. She was beautiful, not despite her plainness, but because of her honesty, her strength, her refusal to be anything but exactly who she was. We were halfway through the vows when the church doors banged open. Constance Hallowell stood in the doorway. She looked smaller than I'd imagined, older, diminished by her fall from grace, wearing black like she was in mourning, and maybe she was. Mourning her lost reputation, her ruined family, her failed revenge. The church went silent. "I came to see if it was true," Constance said, voice cutting across the stillness. "If you actually intend to go through with this farce." Midge turned to face her. I felt her tense beside me, but she didn't cower. "It's not a farce, Constance," Midge said steadily. "It's my life. My choice." "You think you've won?" Constance's laugh was bitter. "You've destroyed our family. Serafina's prospects are ruined. We've had to sell the house. Your father—" "My father," Midge interrupted, "allowed you to torment me for 21 years. I'm sorry for his troubles, but they're consequences of your cruelty, not my choices." Constance took a step forward. Several men stood, ready to intervene if needed. "You were always ungrateful," Constance spat. "I gave you a home after your mother died, fed you, clothed you. You gave me shelter and cruelty in equal measure." Midge's voice didn't rise, didn't waver. "You used me as a weapon to hurt a stranger. You tried to destroy a good man because he had the audacity to see value in me. He didn't want you." Constance's composure cracked. "He wanted Serafina. You were second choice. You've always been second choice." The words hit like bullets. I saw Midge flinch, but then she straightened, lifted her chin, and did something I didn't expect. She smiled. "You're right," Midge said quietly. "He didn't want me at first. He wanted something I could never be. But he learned, we both learned, that what we needed was different from what we thought we wanted." She turned to me, took my hand. "Silas could have sent me back the day I arrived, could have rejected me when the town gossiped, could have let me leave when you tried to destroy him. But he didn't. He chose me. Every day, he chose me. That's not second choice, Constance. That's real choice." Constance stood there deflated. Her weapon, shame, had lost its power. "I forgive you," Midge said. The church gasped. "What?" Constance whispered. "I forgive you. Not because you deserve it, but because I deserve peace." Midge's eyes were steady. "You don't get to live in my head anymore. You don't get to tell me who I am. I'm done carrying your poison." The power shift was visible. Constance had come to wound, but faced with forgiveness, she had nothing, no weapon, no angle, just a bitter woman who'd destroyed herself through her own cruelty. "You're really going to marry her?" Constance asked me, desperate for some final validation that she'd been right. "Every day for the rest of my life," I said. "If she'll have me." Constance looked around the church, saw only faces united against her, saw her failure complete. She left without another word. Reverend Michaels cleared his throat. "Shall we continue?" Laughter rippled through the church, tension breaking like ice in spring thaw. "I believe," the Reverend said with a small smile, "we were at, if anyone has objections, speak now or forever hold your peace." Silence. Beautiful, complete silence. "Then by the power vested in me by Montana Territory, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Silas, you may kiss your bride." I did, and the church erupted in cheers. Outside, the community had organized a celebration. Tables groaning with food, everyone had contributed something. Music from Jacob Morrison's fiddle, dancing despite the cold. Thomas Henderson approached with a package. "Miss Midge, Mrs. Drummond, I mean, this is from all of us." Inside was a doctor's bag, real leather, stamped with her initials, M.D. "You're our doctor now," Thomas said, "official or not." Midge cried, happy tears this time. Mrs. Patterson presented a quilt, made by the church ladies. Each square told a story: the stagecoach arrival, the blizzard ride, the baby's birth, the trial, the victory. "So you always remember you belong here," Mrs. Patterson said softly. Oswin gave her a hand-carved sign. "Dr. Midge Drummond, healer." "For your office, ma'am," he said, blushing. Elwood raised his glass. "To the ugliest joke that ever became the most beautiful truth. To Midge and Silas, may your love thaw every winter. To Midge and Silas." That night, alone on our porch, I pulled out 2 packages. "Wedding gifts," I said. The first was her mother's broken compass, the one her father had given her before he died. I'd had it repaired in Denver. Midge opened the case. The needle swung true north, steady and certain. "You fixed it," she whispered. "Blacksmith said the mechanism was fine. Just needed someone to care enough to fix it." I paused. "Kind of like us." She kissed me then, soft and honest and full of promise. "I have something for you too," she said. She pulled out my father's pocket watch, the one that had been stopped at 3:47 for 17 years. "It's working," I said. "Started ticking 2 nights ago." "I know, I heard it," she smiled. "But look inside." I opened the case. Inside the cover, she'd engraved new words. "Time starts again when we choose love." My throat went tight. "Your father would be proud," she said. "You kept his legacy, not by holding on to land, but by holding on to honor." We sat there as stars wheeled overhead. Inside, the fire blazed, warmer than it had been all winter. Outside, the first hint of Chinook wind stirred. Spring thaw coming. The watch ticked steady in my pocket. Time moving forward again. "Do you ever regret it?" I asked. "Everything that happened? The cruelty? The pain?" Midge thought for a long moment. "I regret that it took me 29 years to find where I belonged. But I don't regret the journey, because it brought me here, to you, to this." She gestured toward the ranch, our ranch now, toward the mountains standing sentinel, toward the future we'd build together. "And sometimes," she said softly, "the cruelest jokes become the greatest mercy." In the distance, a wolf howled, but we were warm, we were safe, we were home, and for the first time in 17 years, my father's watch kept perfect time. 3 months later, spring came to Montana like a promise kept. The snow melted fast, green returning to the valleys. First calf of the season born healthy and strong. Midge delivered it herself, laughing as she worked, her medical bag never far from reach. She'd set up an office in the ranch house. Word spread fast. Dr. Midge would see anyone, charging what they could afford or nothing at all. People came from 50 miles around, some for healing, some just to hear her story. The story of the ugly daughter who became the territory's greatest treasure. One afternoon, a letter arrived from Boston, from Serafina, not Constance. "Dear Midge, Mother won't speak of you, but I must. You were braver than I ever was. I hope someday to have half your courage. S." Midge read it once, then walked to the stove and dropped it in the fire. "Don't you want to keep it?" I asked. "I don't live in the past anymore," she said, watching it burn. "I've got too much future to build." That evening, we stood on the porch watching sunset paint the mountains gold and crimson. Coffee steam rising between us. My father's watch ticking in my pocket. Midge's mother's compass pointing true north on the windowsill inside. "If someone had told me last December," Midge said, "that I'd be standing here, married, respected, home, I wouldn't have believed them. If someone had told me I'd be grateful for the cruel joke that brought you here, I'd have called them crazy." She laughed, leaned into me. "Think Constance knows what she did? Gave me everything I never knew I needed? Doubt it." "Good," Midge said. "Let her wonder." And as the sun set over Montana territory, as spring breathed new life into the frozen land, I thought about how we measure worth, not by beauty or breeding or bloodline, but by courage, by kindness, by the way a person stands when everything's against them. Midge had been called ugly her whole life, but she was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen, and I got to wake up beside her every morning for the rest of my life. Sometimes God's best gifts come wrapped in paper you weren't expecting. Sometimes the people who hurt us the most end up giving us exactly what we need. And sometimes, just sometimes, justice doesn't need thunder. It just needs truth, and time, and love strong enough to survive the winter. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. That's a nice story, old man, but life don't work that clean. And you're right, it don't. Not usually. But sometimes, just sometimes, the universe sees fit to take the cruelest joke and turn it into the greatest mercy. Takes a woman who spent 29 years being told she wasn't enough and shows her she was always more than enough. Takes a man who thought he wanted decoration and teaches him to value substance. See, the Hallowells thought they were sending a punishment. What they actually sent was a woman who'd been forged in the fire of cruelty until she was pure steel. A woman who measured worth by what she could do, not how she looked. A woman who could ride through a blizzard to save lives while fancy ladies fainted over broken teacups. Montana winters teach you who's really strong. And beauty? Well, beauty don't keep you warm when the temperature drops to 20 below. But courage does, competence does, love built on respect and partnership, that keeps you warm through any winter. They called Midge the ugly daughter. But you know what I learned from this whole mess? Ugly is just a word people use when they can't see what's actually standing right in front of them. When they're so busy looking for porcelain, they miss the diamonds in the dust. And family ain't about blood. It's about who shows up in the blizzard, who stands beside you when the town's talking, who holds your hand when the verdict comes down against you. That's family. That's what matters. Midge and Silas built something real out there, raised 4 children. She practiced medicine for 47 years, delivered half the babies in 3 counties. He kept the ranch going through drought and depression, and when they died, within 6 months of each other like old couples do, the whole territory mourned. Because they'd proven something the rest of us needed to see. That dignity ain't about how you look. It's about how you stand when the wind's against you. So if this story touched you, if you've ever felt like you weren't enough or been sent someplace as a joke only to find it was exactly where you belonged, leave me a in the comments and tell me, where are you listening from tonight? Till next time, may your dignity carry you through. May you always remember that worth is measured by the heart, not the mirror. And may you find the courage to stand when everything says run. God bless and stay warm out there.